Um, so we are joined also tonight by Ben Keys, who is the president of the Friends of Fittler Square, Fittler Square Residents Association. I'm not sure the exact name. Ben and I had a chance to meet earlier this fall and agreed that the Fittler Residents and the Center City Residents Association need to be aligned much more closely than we have been. And I am hopeful that Ben's board can meet with our executive committee at an early meeting, perhaps in February, and talk about ways in which the Fittler Square residents and the Center City residents will work more closely together. We've got some good ideas, Ben, and I'm sure you do too, and we're looking forward to that. However, Ben is going to present to us on an initiative that we've had a chance to think about, which is the renaming of Tawny Street, which we discussed last year during the pandemic. But the Fittler Square residents have taken the lead, and they have a proposal which Ben will make to us, and a resolution will follow. With that, take it away, Ben. And unmute yourself. There you go.
There we go. Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. And Rick, thanks so much for the opportunity. I'm going to share my screen, and I'll try my best to keep this brief. But this is something we've been working on for, a year and a half now. So it's hard. It's the kind of thing that's sprawled into something that's turned into a pretty big project. So let me just see if I can put this into full screen mode. Let's see. All right. Can everyone see my slides?
Yeah, you can.
Great. So I'm coming to you today in the capacity as a representative of this renamed Taney Street Coalition. I'm not an activist by trade or by training. I'm an educator and a professor at Penn. And along with my wife and two young daughters, I live on Taney Street near Taney and Lombard. And have been, since learning about that this street existed, was really curious as to its history and why it existed, and have really gotten involved in this group's efforts to rename Taney Street. So what I want to do briefly tonight is just go through a few of the details of the steps that we've taken and kind of what we've learned, and then ultimately, ask for a letter of support to rename Taney Street to LeCount Street in honor of Philadelphian Caroline LeCount. So this is the quick agenda for the next 7 or 8 minutes, hopefully. I'm going to keep it on time here. So Roger Tawny, and he pronounces it Tawny, not Taney, was the U.S. Supreme Court Justice who wrote the Dred Scott decision. And this decision is widely considered the most unjust decision in U.S. Supreme Court history. It ruled that Black Americans, regardless of whether they were free or enslaved, could never be citizens of the United States. This is taught in first year of law school as one of the most problematic decisions, ultimately one of the factors that precipitated the Civil War. Roger Taney was a slave-owning Marylander with no direct connection to Philadelphia, aside from having attended Dickinson College, a ways away from the city. The question that always gets asked is, well, is Taney Street named after somebody else? Does it have some other source of the name? And this, especially in Fittler Square, where it's an Irish neighborhood, lots of stories abound about its provenance. So we've done a lot of digging through the historical record, and we're going to be putting out another historical report soon. But the maps tell the story. And if you go back to the 1860 map, you see the first instance of Taney Street in Philadelphia. And this is in Fairmount. You can see the old waterworks, and you can see the Eastern Penitentiary. This was 1858 when a white supremacist was actually the mayor of Philadelphia in a brief period before the city really swung its support wholeheartedly for the Union and anti-slavery cause. And so this name change came right after this decision, when Taney's name was one of the most well-known names in the country, and was at the top of the headlines of the newspapers. And it was really only in the late 1890s when they unified some of the street names across the city that that the names in Fittler Square and Grays Ferry were changed from their prior names, which were Barnwell and Bank Streets. So there's been a kind of a careful investigation into Taney's legacy in recent years, and starting in 2017, which was the result of a movement that had been pushing previously to that. Statues in his honor in Baltimore and Annapolis were taken down, and here's a picture of the statue coming down in Annapolis almost 4.5 years ago. The U.S. House of Representatives removed his bust in the summer of 2020, and the Taney Youth Baseball System, which we all know from Monet Davis's incredible run, they renamed themselves. They took an internal vote and renamed themselves the Philadelphia Dragons in the fall of 2020. So the effort that I'm a part of is this Rename Taney Street Coalition, and the question is, well, why change a street name? And is this changing history, or is this tiddlywinks on the scale of the broader problems that we have in this country? And I think symbols matter. I think the name Taney is a traumatic symbol to many in our community of injustice and this fundamentally unjust decision. And this is a quote from one of my neighbors who said, "No matter how much progress is made, Taney Street is a constant sinking reminder that the system doesn't work for people like me." And so I think hearing that from even just one voice is enough to, raise concerns about a street name that is, symbolic honor that's been up for 164 years now. So, the process that, I missed a slide here. So in talking to neighbors and talking to people in the community, I learned that there have been previous efforts to rename this street. Some of them date back to the 1980s, that there were petitions that circulated then. Some of you on the call who've been in Philadelphia longer than I maybe recall some of those. But the Fittler Square Neighborhood Association held a protest at the Markwood Playground in June of 2020 and posted an online petition and gained nearly 3,000 signatures in support of renaming. And in response to that, we formed a steering group that we called the Rename Taney Coalition, and CCRA was kind enough to support that steering group and to send a representative. And I want to thank Barbara right off the bat for her involvement from since the summer of 2020. And we formed this with RCOs in District 2 and started working with Councilmember Kenyatta Johnson's office to develop a plan for community engagement and a path towards renaming. And that really relied on, how can we engage with the residents and the neighbors who would be affected by this change? Do people understand the history? And do they have the sort of opportunity to have some input in what a new name would look like? So beginning in the fall of 2020, we began working with a stakeholder engagement firm that's called Connect the Dots. We designed a community engagement process that I think might look familiar to some of you, as though we were doing like a large scale, neighborhood development, like we were building a huge skyscraper or something, getting buy-in from the neighbors and the community and making sure that people understood this process. We did 3 rounds since the fall of 2020 of door-to-door outreach all the way along Taney Street. And I didn't show you the full map, but it runs all the way from Grays Ferry up to north of Strawberry Mansion to a neighborhood called Swampoodle. We did a survey of Taney Street residents in the spring of 2021, and 89% of residents who completed the survey supported the name change. We've done multiple rounds of door-to-door outreach and ultimately collected a list of candidate names, alternative names, mostly of Philadelphians who we thought deserved this type of honor. There was an online vote and a door-to-door vote. So we provided postcards to every resident of Taney Street and those within a block of Taney Street, asking them who they would support out of the 5 finalists. And the winner was Caroline LeCount. And so Caroline LeCount's a name that you might not have heard previously, but she's Philadelphia's answer to Rosa Parks. She fought for the integration of the streetcar system in the 1860s, back when streetcars were pulled by horses. And she spent 50 years as a teacher and principal at the Ohio Street School, which was renamed the Octavius Catto School after his death. And they were actually engaged to be married at the time of his death when he was killed, essentially murdered in the street for helping African Americans vote. The location of the Ohio Street School, you might not know, it's actually the location of the Lombard Swim Club. That the swim club is the location of the school where she taught for about 50 years. She was a legendary speaker, public speaker, and activist. She was very active in raising funds for the union effort and for, shooting for the equality of education, access, and inclusion for children who at the time were treated very differently in the school systems. So we just think it's an incredibly great story. Someone who's really not recognized in the city in any substantive way. And there are just, very few women who have streets named after them in this city or really others. So in terms of the process, just, 2 seconds on the process, and then I want to open this up for questions. So City Council is going to hold a full legislative process on this. Again, it's a one-line bill, proposal to change Taney Street to LeCount Street. It would be a permanent name change, like Cecil B. Moore Ave in North Philly, and not an honorary street name. In terms of the logistics, this is the most common concern that's been raised from residents, which is what's going to happen to my mail and to my documents and things like that. So, the zip code doesn't change, the zip +4 doesn't change, and the federal address management system would be automatically updated so that it would be on Google Maps and Uber and Waze and all of those kinds of things. There are some documents that would need to be updated over time. So things like insurance information, things like a driver's license upon its expiration, and those kinds of things. So there are some logistical steps, and we've put together an FAQ document and worked with council members to talk about ways to disseminate that and reach out to those in the neighborhood. I think one of the most interesting things about this process has been building support across a wide range of communities that we've been able to reach out across, really race, class, ethnicity, and geography lines in ways that simply wouldn't have happened. I simply wouldn't have met the leaders of these groups in other neighborhoods were it not for this effort. And so I think of it as an important first step. And so the request from the Rename Taney Coalition is a letter of support from CCRA, saying that they support the process that's been undertaken and the voice of the community. And the aim is that City Council will propose this bill or put this bill up for its initial review in the coming weeks or sometime in February, and that there will be an open hearing where some of these letters can be read aloud and presented to City Council at that time. So I'm going to stop there. I'm happy to take questions. I did my best to summarize a huge volume of stuff, but thanks so much for your time.
Ben, thank you. That was terrific and informative and concise. Are there questions? Please raise your hand using the hand app so I could recognize you. Well, I see Larry. Larry, you have your real hand up, and yeah. I'll recognize you anyway.
Thank you. One question. On that survey in which 89% of the people who responded supported it, what was the actual response rate?
Yeah, so this is one of the challenges, is that we don't have a great denominator. So, and there's a couple reasons for that. One is that a lot of the residents of Taney Street outside of Fittler Square are renters. And so it's been hard to get a sense of how many people are living in some of the rental units. And in Grays Ferry, there are a couple of blocks of Taney Street where over 90% of the homes are rental properties. So we don't have a definitive number for the denominator to say what's the exact number of people we've reached. We've reached hundreds of people in terms of the overall 3 steps of outreach. But I couldn't tell you an exact number for what was the turnout rate for our.
Have a ballpark guess?
I would put the guess at probably between 40 to 60% would be my guess. And again, that's in part because there are a lot of owners who are absent and who aren't reached by leaving things on the door or outreach in that way.
Ben, I need to interrupt you, and I forgot to say at the beginning, I have a business Zoom that I must turn to for a few minutes. I'm going to mute myself and ask Maggie to take over the meeting. so that we can get a resolution. And the next item will be Mike Shade, and I will rejoin the meeting as soon as my business is over in about 10 minutes.
Okay, hello, I'm here. So do we have any other questions for?
Yeah, I have a question. By the way, it's Kathy McMaster, not McGrath. And Ben, I'm on 401 South Taney, if you'd ever like to meet with me. How many people did you survey? You use 89% support the change, but I want to know what the number is.
Yeah, I don't have that number in front of me right now. I can get back to you with that exact number. We've had hundreds of people vote in these 3 different rounds, but I don't have the exact number for how many people voted.
Just as an FYI, again,
it's in our FAQ document that's on our website.
Yeah, I've seen it. Okay.
It's there.
Yeah. It's not many. It's the whole point.
Sorry, Kathy, what was that last point?
I said it's not that many people is the whole point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's 14 blocks of the city, I believe. And like I said, in some of these blocks, it's 90% renters. So, if you look at the turnout rate for some of the elections that the city has had in recent years, we're way above those numbers. And like I said, we've hit every door, at least 3 times. So
not mine. I'm at 401 South Taney.
Well, Kathy, we've recorded your feedback from the very beginning, and we haven't gone back to people who have been pretty clear that they didn't want to be a part of the process. So we've definitely reached out and have tried to make sure that we've heard from residents, and when they've communicated their opinions, we're recording it and trying to not harass them. So that's been our effort, but I'd be happy to chat some more.
Okay.
I see we have some other questions. David Rose and Barbara Halpern. You can go in that order.
I was going to thank Fiddler Square Association for all of this hard work. I really just wanted to praise the amount of research that has gone into it, as well as outreach. I think it's a really good practice not to harass people, that when they make their opinions known, either I am adamantly for, adamantly against, that you don't keep going back to the well, that you record that, and that you spend your resources trying to reach people who you haven't heard from yet. So I just really want to compliment them on the process, as well as their hard work. And I was going to make a motion that CCRA support this effort.
I guess we can entertain that now. We usually do that before we start taking questions. So do we have a second?
I'll second.
Barbara? Okay, Barbara seconded. All in favor? You want to raise your hands?
We're having a discussion.
Well, we're having the discussion about the motion, which is to support this, which is the way we normally do it, but we didn't take the motion at the beginning. Okay, motion passes, and I called on David and then Barbara and then Ben. I see you have your hand up too.
Oh, hold it. We're having the vote and then we're discussing it.
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think usually we discuss, then we vote.
I'm voting on the fact that people want the motion. Okay, the motion has been seconded, and then we're going to have the discussion. I'm sorry, I'm a little rusty at this. Okay. Barbara?
Yeah, I just wanted to put in my 2 cents, having participated in the process that this task force went through in order to listen to the neighbors and the neighborhood about changing the name. And I was actually a facilitator.
Hello? Barbara? Did we lose Barbara? Does anybody hear me?
Yeah, I think we lost Barbara.
Okay. Okay, well, Ben, you had your hand up, and then Susan Kahn. Hopefully she'll come back. Ben?
Well, we lost Ben, but hold on. He's coming back on.
Okay.
There he is,
All
right?
right.
Ben? Is Ben, I don't,
Yeah,
Ben?
I froze. Yeah, I lost the signal. I just came back. I have just a
Barbara
quick
brought,
question.
so you can go.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm back now. Sorry, I don't know. I lost the signal too. But anyway, I was a facilitator at the neighborhood meeting that was done via Zoom by Connect the Dots, and I got to listen to a lot of the neighbors as well as the people that lived on Taney Street. There were quite a few of them present, and although it was far from unanimous, obviously, you know, nothing really ever passes unanimously, but I thought there was a huge consensus among the people that live on the block and the close-in people, the near neighbors, in support of this. So I thought the process was really well executed. People did have notice and an opportunity to be heard, and there were people at the meeting who were opposed to this, and they did get a chance to voice their concerns. Mostly the concerns were about, you know, the personal inconvenience of changing the name, as Ben referred to. People are going to eventually have to change a lot of their personal information, you know, with deeds and the mail and things like that. But I thought the overwhelming consensus from the meeting was that people supported, the neighbors and the neighborhood supported the idea. And we also ran it in the newspaper a few times. We did hear one or two of the residents complain, but the majority of people really supported this. So that was my perspective as an invited facilitator to the meeting with really no agenda.
Ben, do you still want to talk?
Yeah, just a quick question. Does city council have the final say over this, or does the post office have to approve it, or anything beyond city council?
City council has control of the names of the streets that are not state-run streets or, you know, federal highways. So yeah, it is ultimately city council's decision.
Okay.
And I did want to thank Barbara for her involvement and her work as a facilitator. And just one note there, which is that the deed records themselves don't change. So the deeds are defined by space and boundaries of parcels. So those actually don't have a street name on them. So there are definitely some hoops to jump through in terms of documents, but fortunately deeds is not one of them.
Jim, I see you have your hand up. Jim Duffin.
Yeah, I was just going to add a quick 2 cents. Having done a fair amount of research in recent years regarding William Still, and this year is the 200th anniversary of his birth, I've come to really understand this period of history in America and also its connection with Philadelphia. And I think it's very clear from everybody's perspective, and even the African-American community in the 1850s that protested that decision, that Roger Tawny is not one of these problematic founding father types who had like a good side and a bad side in terms of his views on race. I mean, it's very clear that his views on race are very reprehensible to people at that time and still are today. And this isn't one of these kind of mixed stories that we have with some of our founding fathers. And I really commend the neighborhood group taking on this matter and working to honor somebody who the city really should honor today. Thank you.
Do we have any other people who want to speak? I don't see any hands raised. Rick, do you want to take over the meeting again? I see you're back, but oh, are you on your call? I guess he's on his call. Okay, so I'm going to call the vote. Everybody in favor of the resolution to endorse this idea, please use your hand. They're much easier to see the reactions, and I can scroll through more easily. Okay. So, all opposed? Take those hands down, people. We're doing opposed now. Charles Goodwin, are you opposed? You still have that reaction?
No, I'm
hand up.
not. I'm just trying to figure out how the hell to pull my hand down.
Okay, okay. Okay.
Or did you lower it for me?
No, I didn't. You must have
I
figured it
did.
out.
I did.
Okay,
No,
thank
thank
you,
you, Travis.
Travis. Okay, none opposed. The motion carries unanimously. Great.